The sound, if there were one, would not be a clarion call or a sudden alarm. It would be the near-silent, pervasive hum of millions of screens, casting their searing artificial light onto the faces of a population accustomed to immediate consumption. This is the environment where nuance goes to die, the digital ether, where complexity is rendered indigestible and patience is an extinct virtue.
We stand now at the precarious precipice of understanding, looking down upon the rapid, inevitable decay of detailed public discourse.
A decay that has reduced the colossal machinery of the state to a handful of punchy, easily shareable slogans. In the physical reality of governance, far removed from the instant echo chambers, policies are not born in bright, airy spaces. They are developed in quiet, windowless rooms, often situated deep within granite buildings. These spaces are thick with the scent of stale coffee and the dry, papery smell of stacked legislative binders. Some yellowing at the edges, detailing contingencies that stretch forward 20 years. These complex government initiatives, designed to manage systems of staggering scope and interdependence, are then hurled into the simplifying maw of media, only to be summarized in sentences so brittle they fracture under the slightest factual pressure. Our investigation seeks to pull back this veneer of simplification. We are charting a journey through 5 pivotal actions of the state, dissecting the policy architecture, using precise data and the commentary of seasoned experts who understand that governance is less about grand pronouncements and more about the meticulous, grinding gears of operational reality. We aim to demonstrate that every brief soundbite casts a long, impossibly complex shadow over the mechanism it attempts to describe. The first and perhaps most deceptively simple target is the vast expanse of monetary policy. In common conversation, the actions of the central bank are carelessly summarized as simply printing money. This reduction, while satisfyingly visceral, ignores the intricate dance of invisible capital and the subtle leverage points that truly define modern fiscal management. To truly understand this mechanism, one must mentally enter the hushed marble halls of the central banking reserve. These institutions are monuments to calculated patience, their floors polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the high vaulted ceilings. The air inside is cool, consistent, devoid of the frantic energy that characterizes a stock market trading floor. Here, action is measured in basis points, and consequence is calculated in fractions of a percent. The mechanism for controlling the money supply is rarely, if ever, the physical operation of printing presses, but rather the highly technical process of open market operations, the buying and selling of government securities, specifically bonds. Imagine the central bank initiating a subtle adjustment to the interest rate it charges commercial banks, the Fed funds rate. This is not a thunderclap, but a vibration. When the rate rises, it increases the cost for commercial institutions to borrow overnight reserves. This marginal increase in cost is immediately transferred across the entire global ledger system. It affects the decision-making process of lending institutions worldwide, creating invisible, rippling shockwaves. Consider the tangible effect. A large pension fund in a distant city, managing the retirement security for hundreds of thousands of factory workers. That fund's managers are not watching headlines. They are watching the bond yields that react instantly to the central bank's announcement. A rise in the target rate pushes down the price of existing bonds and reshuffles the expected returns on long-term assets. The fund managers must recalculate their risk exposure, often shifting capital out of equities and into less volatile fixed income securities. This shift, driven by a minute change in a distant marble hall, dictates whether a 60-year-old worker will see a projected comfortable retirement or a slightly reduced principal decades from now. Furthermore, the adjustment trickles down to the individual consumer not through magically appearing currency, but through the cost of credit.
That subtle rate increase means the bank across town must charge marginally more for a car loan, a credit card balance, or, most significantly, a 30-year mortgage.
The decision, initially implemented to cool inflationary pressures by slowing the velocity of money, translates 6 months later into a $200 higher monthly payment for the average family seeking to purchase their first home. The complexity lies in the delayed feedback loop and the multiplicative nature of risk assessment. One seemingly small adjustment impacts trillion-dollar institutional investors, who then tighten credit availability, which finally slows the purchase of simple consumer goods, completing the invisible circuit far beyond the initial stimulus. Monetary policy is not a faucet. It is a meticulously calibrated valve controlling a massive, interconnected hydraulic system. We move now from the invisible shock waves of capital to the very visible, yet equally complex, domain of massive infrastructure bills. These policies are invariably sold to the public with promises of rapid construction, a vision of cranes appearing overnight, steel beams soaring skyward, and new rail lines stitching the nation together in a matter of months. They are policies summarized simply as building bridges and roads. The reality of executing a modern multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project, however, is less a blueprint for rapid assembly and more a tangled regulatory thicket. The first hurdle is not procurement of rusted steel beams, but the bureaucratic mountain of legislative compliance. Before the first shovel breaks the earth, the project must navigate a decade-long administrative saga rooted in ensuring accountability and minimizing external harm. Stand on the edge of a proposed construction site, perhaps a vast, newly disturbed earth designated for a high-speed rail corridor. The site itself is quiet, marked only by surveyors' flags fluttering in the breeze and the occasional heavy-duty truck rumbling past. The activity, however, is currently centralized not here, but in stacks of documentation 200 miles away. The most formidable barrier is the Mandated Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA. An EIA is not a cursory check. It is an exhaustive, multi-year study requiring biological surveys spanning seasons, documenting migratory bird patterns, assessing the presence of protected aquatic species in nearby streams, and evaluating the historical significance of every quarter-acre traversed. Expert consultants, whose fees alone can eclipse the annual budgets of small counties, generate reports thicker than phone books, detailing everything from potential shifts in groundwater tables to the noise pollution effect on indigenous bat populations. Each report requires public review periods, mandated consultations with dozens of state, local, and tribal authorities, and often subsequent litigation from concerned citizens or environmental advocacy groups. A simple blueprint detailing the placement of a concrete pillar becomes contingent upon the flight path of a rare beetle. The process is designed to be cumbersome. It is the democratic friction applied to monumental alteration of the landscape. When construction finally begins, years after the bill was passed, the simple act of laying a foundation is governed by procurement laws that prioritize fair competition and minority participation over speed. Every bag of concrete mix, every length of rebar, every subcontractor must be vetted through a rigorous, multi-layered bidding process, designed to prevent fraud and political favoritism. This mandated complexity adds months, sometimes years, to the timeline. The initial promise of a 5-year project to replace a failing bridge often transforms into a 12-year operational reality. Not due to incompetence, but due to the structured, democratic demand for comprehensive oversight. The simple act of connecting 2 pieces of land involves hundreds of thousands of individual, meticulous checks,
ensuring that the legacy of the construction is not just faster travel, but responsible stewardship of history, ecology, and public funds.
It proves that the administrative saga is not the failure of the policy, but the true measure of its reach. Our focus shifts now to the factory floors, where the immediate friction between commerce and conscience occurs: environmental regulation. This essential mechanism, designed to protect shared resources like air and water, is frequently dismissed in economic arguments as nothing more than burdensome red tape that stifles innovation and drains quarterly profits. To understand the tangible impact of environmental policy, one must leave the dry legislative halls and step onto the vast, deafening floor of a heavy industrial manufacturing plant. The atmosphere is hot and metallic, thick with the sharp scent of lubricants and ozone. Above the roar of the assembly line, massive ventilation systems draw off the byproducts of production: steam, particulate matter, and chemical fumes. Before stringent regulation, many of these byproducts were simply vented into the atmosphere or channeled into nearby waterways. The implementation of modern environmental policy forces costly, precise adjustments to this process. Observe the end-of-pipe solution implemented at significant capital expense, a complex filtration and scrubbing system housed in a dedicated building adjacent to the main facility. This apparatus is not cheap. It represents an investment often exceeding tens of millions of dollars. Money diverted directly from shareholder returns or potential expansion capital. This system is designed to divert pollutants that would otherwise reach a crystal-clear river system located just a mile away. The filtration process involves high-speed centrifuges, specialized chemical baths, and massive layered filters that require costly maintenance and disposal. We are not talking about a simple screen. We are talking about sophisticated chemistry designed to isolate heavy metals or microscopic polymer fragments from effluent water. For the factory owner, this expenditure is immediate and non-negotiable. They must hire specialized engineers, monitor outputs continuously, often requiring expensive third-party audits, and report data in real time to regulatory agencies.
This is the tangible trade-off. Every dollar spent on treating wastewater before it is released is a dollar that cannot be spent on marketing or reducing the price of the final product.
The regulation requires the firm to internalize the cost of pollution, a cost previously externalized onto the public health system and the ecological viability of the surrounding region. The decision to maintain a pristine river capable of supporting vibrant fish populations and recreational use is bought at the price of reduced profitability for the manufacturing sector. The economic model is simplified: profit margin versus ecological preservation. The red tape, therefore, is the precise set of rules ensuring that the economic decision always favors the long-term viability of the shared environment. It is the high-cost adjustment required to convert industrial sludge into harmless water, demonstrating decisively that environmental regulation is not abstract bureaucracy, but a continuous, expensive, and necessary physical process happening right now at the operational heart of industry. From the specific point of industrial effluent, we zoom out to the massive, intricate complexity of global commerce, focusing next on international trade tariffs. Tariffs are commonly portrayed in discourse as a simple defensive measure, a financial wall built to protect domestic producers from foreign competition, often summarized as simple economic protectionism. The reality, however, is a vast interconnected web stretching across global supply chains. To visualize this complexity, we must travel to the vast gray seas where container ships sail. A single container ship, hundreds of feet long, is a floating city of commerce, carrying tens of thousands of steel boxes stacked high against the indifferent horizon. Each container holds a meticulously sorted collection of components and finished goods, originating from dozens of different nations, all destined for hundreds of different markets. When a government imposes a tariff, say a 25% duty on imported specialized steel components, the financial impact is not limited to the foreign steel producer.
It hits every point along the chain of custody.
Consider a simple, common appliance. perhaps a residential washing machine assembled domestically. This machine requires a specialized electronic motor control unit. That unit is built in Mexico, but 60% of its value originates from specialized microprocessors and rare earth magnets imported from Asia. If the new tariff is applied to the final assembly of the motor control unit, the cost increase cascades backward and forward simultaneously. The initial price increase is paid by the domestic appliance manufacturer, who faces a choice: absorb the cost, reducing profit margins, or pass it along to the consumer. Because they are still competing in a tight market, they often pass along a portion. But the complexity deepens because the specialized components were already taxed upon initial entry into the global market, creating layered duties that accumulate like barnacles on the hull of the container ship. We follow this tariff-inflated cost from the distant misty docks to the very specific textures and colors of the suburban grocery aisle and hardware store. That 25% tariff on steel affects the price of the heavy-duty shelving unit in the hardware store, the metal frame of the new refrigerator, and even the specialized packaging used for frozen foods. The subtle price increase is pervasive. It is not limited to the high-profile targeted goods. It permeates the domestic economy through thousands of unnoticed inputs. The economic protectionism intended to save 100 jobs in a domestic steel mill unintentionally raises the cost of living for millions of working families, requiring them to pay slightly more for a new garden tool, a spare part for their car, or the construction materials needed for a home renovation. The intricate web means that the tariff, which seemed simple and defensive on paper, becomes a globally distributed tax on consumption, connecting that silent, distant container ship on the Gray Sea to the minor but persistent inflation felt by a shopper examining the price tag on a simple power drill in the local hardware store. The simplicity of the soundbite utterly fails to capture the gravity of this economic interdependence. Finally, we turn to the most intimate and consequential area of state action: nationwide healthcare subsidies. These policies are often painted with the broad brush of immediate, blanket aid, promising access and financial security for the vulnerable. In reality, administering nationwide healthcare subsidies involves navigating systems of profound mathematical complexity and bureaucratic density. It is not a check written for everyone in need. It is a meticulous, ever-shifting calculation based on actuarial science and complex eligibility matrices that define the precise boundary between accessible medical care and devastating personal insolvency. To grasp the operational reality, one must consider the vast, impersonal scale of the actuarial tables. These tables are not stacks of paper. They are massive data sets detailing the statistical risk of illness, accident, and longevity across entire populations, segmented by geography, age, pre-existing condition status, and income level. A subsidy policy is, fundamentally, a reallocation of risk and cost across these tables. When the government provides a subsidy, it is performing a complex mathematical maneuver, expanding the risk pool to include individuals who would otherwise be priced out of the private insurance market, and using federal funds to offset the higher per capita cost of insuring this expanded population. The definition of vulnerable is not based on feeling, but on a precise, multivariable formula. The complexity of the eligibility matrix is where the policy meets the individual citizen, often with bewildering results. Consider a citizen seeking coverage. They do not simply fill out a single form and receive a blanket solution. They enter a digital or physical labyrinth, requiring the submission of detailed financial records, proof of residency, and projections of annual income. The subsidy amount is not fixed. It is calculated on a sliding scale that often changes based on small fluctuations in income or household composition. If a citizen receives a slight raise that pushes their household income above 200% of the federal poverty line, the subsidy amount might drop dramatically, resulting in a sudden, substantial increase in their monthly premium. An increase that effectively cancels out the benefit of the raise. For millions of citizens, the policy represents a razor-thin boundary line. The promise of immediate aid translates into an annual, stressful recalculation, where small financial changes can mean the difference between maintaining affordable access to life-saving medications or facing institutional insolvency. The complexity is compounded by the varying nature of the subsidy itself. Is it a premium tax credit? Is it a cost-sharing reduction? Each mechanism has its own rules, deductible structures, and administrative hurdles. Visit a community center where dedicated staff help citizens enroll. The room is quiet, filled with the thin rustle of paperwork and the low, weary sound of explanations being repeated patiently. The sheer volume of dense, tiny print on the forms and legal notices underscores the difficulty. The administrators are not simply handing out aid. They are attempting to match an individual's unique and fluctuating economic reality to a massive, rigid, and actuarially designed system. The subsidy, therefore, is not a simple gift of access. It is a deeply complex operational mechanism of risk management, continuously recalibrating the boundary between health security and financial ruin for the neediest segments of the population. We have traversed the cold, calculating precision of the central bank's rate adjustments, the decades-long administrative crawl required to lay a single stretch of rail, the high-cost commitment required by industry to protect a distant river, the global price impact of a tariff levied on a single component, and the actuarial tables defining access to fundamental care. In each instance, the policy was developed through exhaustive research, passed via a tumultuous legislative debate, and implemented through a network of operational requirements that resist the casual generalizations of public discourse. This simplifying impulse, the desire to reduce a $1 trillion infrastructure bill to jobs now, or monetary tightening to printing money, is a failure of intellectual discipline, not of policy intent. The operational mechanisms of the state are systems of profound consequence, defined by subtle leverage points, necessary administrative friction, global interdependence, and mathematical precision. These are not flaws in the design. They are the unavoidable complexity inherent in managing a modern, interdependent society. This report proves decisively that every brief, resonant soundbite cast into the digital air casts a long, incredibly complex shadow over the true operational mechanisms that quietly, constantly shape our world. The true task of the informed citizen is to step out of the glaring digital light and examine the deep, intricate shadows that lie beneath.